You're on the line with PsychLyne.
Hello to our dear listeners and welcome to PsychLyne, Confessions Over Coffee, the Psych Week 2025 special. Today's episode is titled 3 Years Later, Lifting of the Veil on the BS Psych Status Quo.
And with that being said, we're going to be sharing our experiences as psychology students to each other. What is it like being a freshman, being a sophomore, and being a junior?
Our program has evolved from its small beginnings back in 2022 and when our first episode was released in 2023. Time flies by so quickly. Your pioneer batch are now third-year students. Hello. And even if we're still the youngsters of the college, we've expanded and grown up.
Ate Aki, Kuya Sam, and I will be speaking on behalf of our year levels. We have a lot to share and talk about today, from our learning experiences, our personal growth, our peers and dynamics, and of course, to what our insights are moving forward.
And just a quick disclaimer to our listeners, this episode is recorded in Get Caffeinated, a public cafe in Padac City. Thank you, Get Caffeinated, for accommodating us for this venture. With that being said, some background noise will be out of our control and will affect the recording.
So just imagine this as a casual chat between college students in a cafe over tea and coffee with all the hustle and bustle of the patrons behind the scenes. Now, on with the episode! Hello, dear listeners. It's me. I've risen from my grave of invisibility or whatever you call that. I'm Aki, the third-year host.
And I'm Sam, joining here to represent the second-year students.
And I'm John, joining here to represent the first-year students.
So yeah, year 3, I remember psychology was not actually my first prime. I was supposed to be in engineering.
Okay.
Yes, but actually, I don't know why I chose psychology, but through the years, parang wala naman akong regrets. Parang it's kind of this, okay, buti na lang nag-psych ako. Yeah, but there's still that regret at the back of my mind na I did not take up engineering, but psych is a very beautiful, ang dami mong profound realizations, especially on year 3, and I'm so excited for you both. Like, na dumaan dun sa karanasan, kandidigrang ako na. So, what about you guys? What brought you to this course?
So, I have the same reason as you, Ate Aki. So, psych was really not my priority in the first place across any universities that I have applied to. So, it was initially for MMSU. My first prio was marine biology. And my second prio was nursing. I just decided last minute since I was like having a career crisis on what would I want in either medicine or law. And I didn't know what to choose, what course would be best fitting. So I decided, since in my previous contemplations regarding my med career, I think psych was at least one of the bits that I've been considering. And I was like, okay, why not go for this course instead? Why not? It's fun to understand how people would behave. And I was really viewing psych as like a clinical setting in that time. So from then on, I went for the interview and then Ma'am M said for this particular line, ba't ka nandito? Sabi niya naman, ba't ka nandito? Hindi mo naman kami yung gusto mo dito. Oh. Tapos sinasabi niya ay, okay, baka tsakin ako ng marine bio, parang kinuha ka na from them. Parang ganun ang sinasabi ni Ma'am M sa akin. So, pero iniisip ko naman, not since I love the ocean, I love the beaches, I love going, diving, and swimming and stuff like those. But I just really see it as a hobby and not something that I would use as a career. So that's really one of my considerations why I decided to pursue psych. To really bridge that gap if either would choose law or med. And really, I didn't have any bits of regret pursuing psych as my course now in college. It really helped me realize a lot of things the same as you. And I'm really looking forward also to furthering and expanding my understanding in the social aspects in terms of individual aspects of persons in the coming years as we progress in our study in psychology.
Looks like there's a common denominator between all of us. Psychology also wasn't my first priority. What I really wanted to be was to be in computer engineering because I really love computers. I like technology. I know how to work my way around computers and I built computers before, but I think that some way, somehow, through like the persuasion of maybe my mom, I went into psychology because of her. And because of a lot of my own researches and a lot of my own, I guess, contemplations about whether or not I want to become here a law student or an engineering student, my first experience going into psychology was very last minute, just like Kuya Sam. And it was at the point where all of the slots for the first year psychology was filled. I really bugged Ma'am M and emailed her a lot during before the admission process and told her that I really wanted to become a psychologist, or I really wanted to get into BS psychology. I really wanted to try out this program, and I listed a lot of reasons as to why I wanted to be in this program. Eventually she gave in and there I was in the admission process, and she even told me, I'm so glad that you bugged me, because if you didn't, you would have never gotten in, because the slots were technically already full. Thankfully I got in, because during my first experience or my first sem here, it's been really good so far. My favorite subject during our first semester was Introduction to Psychology, really only because it was somehow the lightest subject that we had amidst all of our other non-major subjects such as our art appreciation or our history. What really made it enjoyable was Ma'am M and the way she taught us and the way that she structured her lessons. And she was very, very hands-on in how she wanted to teach us the basics and fundamentals of psychology. And so my first experience so far has been really, really good.
Okay, we have a list of questions that we will go over here, and then parang let's just ask one another. Let's take turns saying our inputs. The first one here is, what were the biggest surprises or misconceptions you had about psychology before you dove deeper into the subject? Sorry, natawa ako kasi dito sa notes ko I wrote Sigmund Freud. I thought when I was in LM, ganun, I thought siya yung father ng psychology. The same way na parang matunog si Newton because he's the father of calculus, ganun. So Sigmund Freud is always associated with psychology. So I thought he was the father of psychology. But okay, first year, boom, that misconception unlearned. Okay? Tapos, siguro before being a psych major, I thought na psychologists were these people who could read people on the get-go. Like for example, we're just sitting here, right? I'm sitting across you and then I look at you and then I can tell na you're a middle child person. Parang ganon. Pero it doesn't work that way pala. And it actually, like along the years, na-realize ko na because of that, we became a science. Parang, dati kasi, pseudoscience si psychology because, the research was lacking in terms of rigor, in terms of validity, and all that. And yun pa, yung misconception ko about psych na parang, I thought it was a soft science. Yes, experts, yung mga haters ng psych may say na it's a soft science, but I would like to debunk that on this podcast. It's not. We go through a lot. We go through p-values. We go through statistics. Yung foundation ng psychology is like a lot of facts and a lot of research, a lot of numbers, a lot of evidences. For me, noon, very eye-opening realization siya. Na parang, okay, so psych is not this intuition, cosmic energy stuff. Okay, it's not. It's numbers, a lot of numbers, and so much heavy science.
So I have like that similar notion rin of psychology as a misconception. Since I have mentioned in the first parts in our introduction that I thought psychology was just in the clinical setting. But then when I entered psychology in the university, I realized that it is really not in a clinical setting. Psychology in the first place is a social science. So we as a psychologists in the future are already social scientists. So in other social science disciplines like sociology and even statistics, they really get to understand not just in an individual level of understanding, but in a more leveled up societal level of understanding people and how they behave for each other. So especially when it comes to statistics as well, I really agree with Ate Aki. She said that psychology is really not a soft science. So those people out there in the hard sciences saying that psychology is something that is not really profound or something that cannot change society because it's a soft science. But I kid you not, psychology in its any sense has an explanation for everything. Psychology in its very essence will really have debunking things from or how we would really understand society in the first place. So lalo sa first year namin when it comes to psych stats, there I have realized that it can also deviate from multiple disciplines. We have political psychology, we have social psychology. You can really say that psychology is really a tool that can help us understand. Here, we really have that connection towards other people. We have that built-in foundation that makes people understand why they behave this certain way or why they act this certain way. As compared sa pag-physics lang, it is a law that has definite limits. You cannot go beyond your understanding from what is the force of the things, what is the mass, what is the object. So you are just bound to it by those limits. But for psychology, you go beyond that. You go to understand behavior. You go and understand why people behave in certain ways, because the human mind does not have any limits. And to kid you not, the human mind is really more underexplored than what we have in the universe. So we know a lot of the universe than we have in our human mind itself. So that itself is already the gift that psychology can bring. And that is something that we would want to share to this world as we are studying psychology in the university level, and hopefully furthermore as we go on in our studies.
The biggest and most childish and stereotypical misconception that I had going into psychology, or before going into psychology, was by the end of it, I would be able to read minds, and I would be able to look at the body behavior and body language of people and say that, diagnose and tell them that, oh, you're being anxious right now. Oh, this happened in your past. Or, oh, this just happened recently to you and whatnot. That was sourced mostly from my interest in criminal psychology. That's what really got me into psychology in the first place, in detective work, in basically trying to figure out the minds of these criminals and the minds of why they behave that way. And so a lot of that was attributed to me being very interested in how they got into their actions or how they got into that life. And so one of the most childish misconceptions of that was me being able to predict what people were going to think of, what people were going to say. Now, coming into my first year in psychology, I don't know a thing. I don't know a thing about people. I don't know a thing about psychology. I didn't know a thing about psychology. Or the psychology that I did know before I went into this course was very bordering on what 𝙤𝙚 said earlier, pseudoscience, and really not based on any empirical data or rigor or validity, right? But now, as 𝐾𝐲 said, going into my second semester of my first year of psychology, being introduced to psych stats, I realize now that psychology really isn't just based on theory. It isn't just based on, assumption and whatnot. A lot of these theories are actually fundamental in the sense that they're grounded on facts. They're grounded on statistical research. They're grounded on the bodies of work that multiple psychologists and scientists have built upon over time. And so, again, I agree. And there's something that Ma'am CJ told me, or told our class back then while we were studying. While psychology may be considered as a soft science to some, that does not mean that it is not powerful. In the sense that psychology is powerful, in the sense that it can change, again, the world, like this said. And I really believe in that, because psychology is basically the fundamental research on how human brains work. If you can understand how people behave, if you can understand why they behave that way, I believe that a lot of our problems, especially in a lot of sectors that are, very related to how people behave and how people work and act, I believe that psychology is very powerful in the sense that they can change fundamentally how people think, and they can change fundamentally the bad behaviors and the negative habits, and basically a lot of the, a lot of the gunk, a lot of the toxicity, and a lot of the mentally bad habits that people have built over time. And so over time, I guess I'm hopeful that as psychologists and psychology as a sector and psychology as a profession can really change the world for a better place, maybe not through concrete measures, but maybe through the abstraction of the human mind, and hopefully that'll show up itself in our concrete world.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Kasi I agree, parang lalo sa sinabi ni Ma'am CJ rin sa amin. And I think sa atin like those people who consider psychology as a soft science never forget the change that it can bring up in the world. So that is the power of psychology. So one of the favorite subjects that I have so far, or not one, the favorite subject in psychology that I am currently loving is Sikolohiya Filipino. And because of Ma'am CJ's influence towards us into delivering Sikolohiya Filipino, I really realized how psychology, even in our local areas, really brought out that change in a sense that we are becoming less colonial in our time. We are decolonizing, diba, since the Philippines had a 333-year of a history of long, hard colonization, not just from the Spaniards, but even from the Americans and even in the Japanese era. And until now, there are still many people who really have that colonial thought that tayong mga Pilipino, we are just inferior, that we are just looking into this Western standards and ideals. But because of Sikolihiyang Pilipino, it has brought that catalytic change or that reaction that said, we don't have to rely on the thoughts of other people. We don't rely on the thoughts of Westerners to dictate how we would want to behave for ourselves. Because of Sikolihiyang Pilipino, it has laid out the fact that we also have our own thoughts that we want to share to the world. Parang itaguyod na ito tayo bilang isang Pilipino. There is nothing else or no one else in the world that who calls themselves Filipino. It is us Filipinos who would want to set that direction on how we would want to be known, how we would want to be recognized. And from then on, we are in that reaching pinnacle of decolonizing that a certain colonial mentality that we really want to establish na meron tayong nakakaya, meron din tayong may ibibigay sa mundo to cause change. So that is one thing or one powerful aspect that Sikolihiyang Pilipinas brought out from psychology itself. And not only that, even in the EDSA revolution, Sikolihiyang Pilipino had a say in that. Hindi lang say, pero had a foundation as to why Filipinos behave that way during that time where there is political turmoil and a time na parang sinasabi ng mga iba that we are just clinging into that power or authority. But because of that pakikibaka natin, that deep connection na kailangan natin ipaglaban kung ano yung tama, na nakikita natin na yung mga karapatan ng mga pantao noon is parang naapakan na. So kahit hindi natin kilala yung mga biktima, kahit hindi natin kilala yung mga tao, but because of that connection, na yung sabi natin pakipagkapwa sa kanila, we have made that their challenge as also our challenge. We have made their suffering as also our suffering para tayo ay makilaban against that dictator that we had. So that is one powerful aspect that psychology can bring. It can bring down that colonial mentality. It can also change society gravely for us to have a better future ahead. Parang labanan, kumbaga, yung mga mali sa ating society and in order for us to bring change for a better world. Speaking of...
Next. So what part of your course have you enjoyed the most so far? Oh my gosh. As a third year student, siguro for me the most most memorable was field methods. Oh my god. It's I don't even have the words for it. It's just life-changing. Parang it grounds you in a way na there's this epiphany realization na parang sorry, I don't mean to trauma dump here, but you know, as someone na sobrang passive in life, na parang you're just, you know, on autopilot and all that, it makes you feel na parang you are here for a reason. Like you remember, it gives you your whys. Na parang you see these people in the communities, and just there's this profound realization. I really can't put it into words. Basta to those naka-experience na ng field methods, your field days, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm so excited for John to feel that too.
Yes, sir.
Because, oh my God, did you go to Kanaam?
Sadly, ate, we did not. We were not able to go because of, squaa.
But really, psychology is very powerful, as sabi ni John and adding Sam kanina, because it's just everywhere. As long as there's a human being capable of thinking, behaving, that's already psychology, right? So, hello, soft science who?
Ay, ate, can I just ask, what was your topic noon sa field methods po?
Oh my gosh. Eto na yung sinasabi kong baka I might not remember. Field methods. I remember. Yung about the vendors sa amin. So, ethno. We were doing ethno and parang we had this parbangon na we went to the market as vendors. And grabe talaga na nadanas namin yung hustle. Yung, as someone na I don't really like dealing with people, it was, grabe, like, 5 customers, you have to serve them all at the same time. Ang kulit nila at there's an angry one, there's different moods, you have to deal with them all at once, the patience you have to demonstrate and all that. It's really, you see life you're a changed person. You're never the same. The Aki from first year is very sheltered, very naive compared to the tired Aki third year. But yeah, it was about vendors and yung struggle nila. We dealt about the politics of space. There's also this balwa-balwarte concept wherein vendors have their own territories. They have their own, yung parang customer na laging bumibili. What's that? Suki. Yeah, the Suki concept. And also yung mga techniques nila, how they persuade, how they bargain. Meron pa yung power, yung parang power play. Merong power play na nagaganap when you bargain. Like, how do you leverage being a woman? How do you leverage being an old person? All that. Grabe. Even, Diyos ko, lahat ng bagay, psychology. Okay. Yun lang masasabi ko.
So, what's one thing that really, or course that I enjoyed the most as a second year student or dumaan sa second year? And I'm excited for you too, for field methods.
Yeah.
So it really is something that you would get hands-on experience that would really change your life. Parang sa una, hindi mo iisipin na ganito yung mangyayari. You're just, you don't know what you're going to do. You're confused sa una and a bit scared rin. Parang feeling mo, ay no, to, mababagsak ba ako sa subject na ito? Hindi ko alam. Pero and sa kalagitnaan doon, parang you won't care kung bagsak ka man or hindi. What you just care is the experience that you've got and how would that change you. So for our field methods, we are now looking into marriages. But particular marriages between a local Ilocana woman towards foreigners. So we're looking at that intercultural differences and how do they bridge to make their marriage work. And so far, akala ko noon, or akala namin, we're just looking at love and marriage. But then we have realized, it's not just love and marriage that brought them together. It was also in a sense of political things. In a sense na dito sa Pilipinas, mahirap ang buhay. So, yung mga babaeng Ilocana, Filipino women, go out to migrate from the country to give a better life for their families. So that is their first reason why they are going to migrate. They are having that sacrificial time to escape, or hindi man escape, to sacrifice what could have been a time of love, a time of cherishing for their families that they have in the Philippines. But because of hardships in life, they had to make that sacrifice to go abroad, to build a better life for their families. And that is now where love comes in. They are fortunate enough to find love in the eyes of others. So, this would be a misconception, or we are now destroying that misconception na yung mga umaasawa sa AFAM, they are not after money in the first place. They are actually struggling to find money. They are actually struggling or they are actually having that hardship to work there or to make that sacrifice of working for their families in the Philippines. So it evolved from that hardship in life towards love in the end. So hindi lang yun. Even in yung mga mini activities ni Ma'am Ana noon, yung parang mag-give tayo ng preliminary experience into the fields. So we were tasked to go and interview, or hindi naman interview, pero experience and understand the life of fast food workers. So yun yung unang field activity namin noon. And we have come to a shocking realization. Dito namin na-bridge yung parang understanding mo lang ay tanungin mo lang kung kumusta yung life nila as fast food workers. Pero habang na-realize namin, or while we are at it, and transcribe na kami, doon ko na-realize, wait, this is not just about what their hardship is. It goes at a much larger level. Nandito na ako, nag-Marxist na kami, capitalism na. So we have found out na yung very capitalistic na fast food chain would actually be McDonald's as compared to other fast food chains. Kasi McDonald's is parang, pag titignan natin, they are the ones that are very friendly towards how they treat raw their staffs, how they are going to give so much benefits. Kasi totoo yun. McDonald's really gives the best treatment and the best benefits for their staff as compared to other fast food chains. Because pag, for example, sa Jollibee, pag nahulog or nagka-aksidente sa pag-prepare ng food yung crew, it would go na makaltasan yung sahod nila. But for McDonald's, kung may mangyayaring aksidente when it comes to the preparations of food, hindi makakaltasan yung sweldo nila. Parang kasi nakaalat na sa budget nila that any food waste will not be at the cost or expense of the salary of their employees. Pag tinitignan natin, okay, that's good. McDonald's is taking care of their customers in the first place. But what comes at a cost is the work hours, the load that they have really comes at the capitalistic framework of treating your employees well but exploiting them far more ahead. So that is why we can say that, and we have found out na McDonald's talaga yung very capitalistic society. And all that came from field methods. All that came from our experience on the field as psychology students. So that is really something that I enjoy most in doing, especially now sa current research namin. So I hope, hopefully, sa iyo sa first year, John, you would also get to experience the same enthusiasm and change that this subject would bring to you too.
All right. This may be a bit late into the podcast now, but for me and any other first years who are, listening to this, can you contextualize a bit more as to what field methods mean, or like the gist of basically what you do in field methods?
I think yung name ng course itself gives away clues kung ano siya, field methods. So it's about the field, methods in the field. Na parang it's a subject or a course na parang you get to do hands-on learning about the community. Parang you go out of the academe, yes, and go to the different aspects of community, and parang you study them. You learn ano yung culture nila, ano yung systems, what psychology is in play in there. And it's really, 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 really the most changing so far na subject for me as a psych major. What about you, Sam? How would you describe field methods?
So yes, aside from the technical course description of field methods that you're really just going out in the field, because the field is like the workplace or the research place or the setting that you are going to study. So aside from that, what really means in field methods is that you get to explore, just like what Ate Aki has said, explore the community and see what psychological underpinnings are in play, especially in our major as psychology. So, but for me, I think field methods would really matter if you realize the change that it has brought into you. Kasi you don't just go there for study. Kasi it would be transactional. You're just treating your subjects as objects in that sense. So you don't just view field methods as a study, but view field methods as a change that you can bring out. Or at least parang this field methods would be an avenue that you would give a part of yourself for the community. So that is what field methods mean for me, but I hope for everybody also who have undertaken that subject. You're giving a part of you. The community that you're going to study or the people that you're going to study also would give a part of them for you. Parang you are now getting that connection in the sense na this is not about study anymore. This is not about research anymore, but it's getting to understand each other's stories as you go on. So that is what field methods for me is.
I would like to add to that. Parang for me, field methods is when a psych major truly graduates from the classroom. Okay? Because that is when you actually try to socialize. Parang you put yourself in the society and you're changed. You're never just about theories anymore. You're never just about the grades anymore. You're never just about the scores and passing. You actually start to care. Okay? You see the tricycle drivers, you see the vendors, and you think about them. They're not just background people anymore for those, mga naive people. But you actually see them as people. There's that. It's a graduation of some sort.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. Now I'm getting more excited to finally get into my second year, because I've always believed that psychology isn't studied in a vacuum, in the sense that you can't really study psychology without, going out to meet people, without socializing with, I guess, your respondents or your subjects or your topics of interest. Because so far, what I've enjoyed so far in my first year was, again, my psychological statistics, especially in my laboratory. But I realized that what we've been working for so far is, theories, stats, numbers on a screen out of a code book. And so while that is fun, obviously, because again, I have a background in technology and I really love the coding aspect of psychological statistics, I realized that we've been studying basically just half of what psychology was.
Not even half.
I mean half, or like, a quarter, an eighth of what psychology is. And so, I'm just really excited to go out into the field, actually study and actually see people and not just numbers in a screen, because while yes, psychology as in empirical research and in actually studying with rigor and with validity, of course we have to work with numbers, of course we have to work with massive amounts of group data and whatnot. But I think, again, are really wanting to get that part of, I really want to get into that part of psychology wherein I'm in the field, I'm observing people, I'm interacting with them, I'm communicating. I can see our topics of interest face to face and say that, wow, okay, this is what psychology is all about. It's not just about sitting in a computer and, typing out whatever sort of theory or fundamental aspect or code that I want to spit out, right? And so, really excited for second year.
Yes. So the next question here is, what aspect really challenged you in your respective years and how did you overcome it? Parang I can connect it with what John has been saying of how psychology, okay, aside from the social aspect, there's the theories and the numbers, right? For me, personally, consistent yung challenge yung about yung quantifying behavior. Because, diba, there's always research every sem.
Yeah.
And it has always been research has always been a challenge, especially paano mo ika-quantify yung behavior. Parang, okay, to simplify it, I struggle with making questions sa research and all that kasi you really need, parang, in order for your research to be valid, it has to measure what you intend to measure, right? And how do you make it so? That itself is challenging for me. Making the tool, making the parameters, kumbaga. Like, for example, if I want to measure how good you are at coloring, would I give you a math set problem? Hindi, right? So yun, it's the parang the work of identifying or parang making yung mga questions, yung mga parameters, measurements of yung mga magko-quantify ng behavior. It's a consistent challenge, first, second, and third year. Especially ngayong third year because we have psych assessment and it's about making a test. Okay? We choose a concept, we choose a construct. The first one actually got rejected. I don't know why, Europe, but it's about political historical distortion because, election and we're concerned because the country is, I won't even say because Alright. But yeah, we were planning to measure that. How much political historical distortion has been happening, how does it happen and why? So, I don't know, Europe shut that down. So, okay, addings, you can take that as a future study, but i-reframe nyo na lang. So yun, pag-construct ng tools to quantify behavior, that has always been a challenge for me.
I have to share the same challenge also as Ate Aki here. So, nagsimula ito rin sa first year when we were dealing with psychological statistics, since our topic was also kind of the same with in terms of politics also. So we were looking at if the mother or the father would have a greater political influence towards their children. So in their child rearing, who has the more influence towards their child's political ideology? So we were having trouble as to how we would quantify that, since it is a mixture of data. There's qualitative aspects of it and there's the purely quantitative aspects. So although there are measures of it like chi-square to bridge on how you would understand qualitative and quantitative together to quantify that behavior or to quantify the value. So that was really a certain challenge because you really have to think a lot on what you are going to input to it to yield a valued outcome for your research. And aside from finding troubles in quantifying data, I would also share the same challenge in setting parameters of what you really want to measure, since my struggle for me is because I input a lot of questions in under one research theme. Kasi sa aking isip naman ay baka kulang to. Baka hindi ko makuha yung gusto kong makuha, kaya dinadagdagan ko siya ng questions. And I think quite relevant yung question na yun, but it would be too much in that sense. So my overthinking into thinking na baka may kulang leads to like a sort of distortion on what we intend to measure as researchers. So that's one thing that we must also overcome, or something that I will overcome. Pagdating sa second year naman, experimental psychology, it's really going to look into the numbers. Sa Express Psych naman namin noon, we were looking into the influence of either a text reading or audiovisual mode of learning on what would be a greater influence in terms of academic performance of students, so that teachers would get a hint kung ano talaga yung mas effective way into them improving their teaching strategies, so that students would have a greater understanding of the concept and subjects, and in turn would lead to a greater academic performance in them. Really bridging the gap between quantifiable data and qualitative data would really mean a lot in our fields. We cannot really forego the power that quantitative data would have. So that's something that we must face ourselves with, on how we would really want to give meaning towards the data that we are going to pursue, or the data that we are going to decode, in order for us to gain a better and greater understanding of certain aspects.
Okay. Looks like there's another common denominator between all of us in research. And so I was a STEM student back then, but my favorite part of my time there was our social research, because our topic for grade 11 was social research. It was about impacts of the pandemic on students and teachers. And so I really do love the psychology of research. I really don't like experimenting with STEM stuff and whatever, like building, constructing projects. I don't really like that. And so coming into first year psychology, again with psychological statistics, I guess the most difficult or most challenging thing so far was, again, quantifying qualitative data. And so, because I believe that psychology is fundamentally a qualitative research. It's a social science. It deals with behavior and action, which is something that's very different from physics, from math, wherein everything is essentially quantitative already. And so trying to quantify feelings and emotions is hard. And so our research right now is about whether a mother's criminality or criminal background increases the likelihood of their child's criminality. So essentially intergenerational transmission of crime, right? And so one of the most difficult things in trying to, I guess, trying to plan out that research was very related to Kuya Sam's grievances earlier, when he said that he created a lot of questions. And so for our group, and for me specifically, I created a lot of questions trying to figure out, okay, how do we operationally define criminality of a mother? Is it through their arrests? Is it through whether they've had any troubles with the justice system? How about child criminality? Is it juvenile delinquency, or is it whether they've been incarcerated or not? And so trying to define all of those terms and trying to squeeze it into one single variable is really hard. And again, trying to actually, synthesize and create conclusions out of pure numbers has been really hard, because how can I say that there's an increased likelihood of their child if we're only looking at this one variable, right? Why can't I add more questions? Why can't I add more variables to really make sure? But one thing that some CJ told us so far is that we really can't answer everything. We have to make a lot of assumptions, and we really cannot say that something causes another. We can only say that it has maybe a relationship. We can only say that it has a correlation. And so I've stopped trying to answer every question that I've made, and I tried our best to just try to see if there's a relationship, try to see if things are actually the way they are, or if there's any other confounding variables that may have affected our conclusion. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that research is hard. That's the gist of it. Research is hard. Trying to read numbers is hard. In psychology, trying to read numbers and apply that to people is even harder. And so that's basically one of the biggest challenges so far of my first year.
Now we have here another question. Can we share moments where we felt the most proud being psychology students? So for me, there are various moments where I felt most proud as a psych student from the things I've been doing. The thing that I would feel most proud about is when I have that sense na I would not care much about what the fears that I have while studying this course. For example, sa algebra namin noon. I guess I'm not the only one who fears that subject, or I'm not the only one who got low grades in that subject. But I did not see it as something that would crush my dreams. Parang even though that I would not have the opportunity to walk up stage and be proud of Latin honors and stuff like those, that did not stop me from continuing my best or doing my best, in a sense na there's nothing really to bring you down when you're really having the goal that you have set straight up for yourself. So no matter what other subjects that is not even related to psychology that would that would try to make or bring out the worst in you or bring out the best in you, really focus on what you would really want to pursue. And in my sense, I would really want to help a lot of people. I would really want to help society through my course that I am studying right now. Because I know that there are various things that I can give into this to have a greater help. So from that goal, all the other subjects that may not be like, let's say, related to even psychology are just parang hindi ko naman kino-consider na insignificant, but yeah, they still have their significance for other fields. But for me, that's something I can be proud of, that no matter what things that may now bring me down or the setbacks that we have or that I had, it's not something that would really be drawing me back from what I would really want to pursue. So that's something that I can be really proud of.
Okay, so 3 years into psych, there's a lot. Wow, a lot. But what siguro yung pinaka significant, I would say, is when I was in Bali. Because I went to Bali to present our paper, our ex-psych paper, which is about kuripotness. We're Ilocanos, I'm assuming. Now, we know what kuripot means. You know, it's being stingy or frugal. Parang, as I was preparing, I was breathing before my presentation, there was this realization na parang, I'm actually starting to care now about local research. And parang realization ko lang, all my researches are something about culture, it's localized. So parang, oh my goodness, it's giving ako yung magiging local expert soon kasi. So yeah, siguro that was a proud moment because it's really beautiful when you're in the academe and you have this sort of epiphany that you're not just studying anymore, just to study, just to pass. You're having your whys. You are realizing your whys. You have people, and parang there's this sense of wanting to give back to the community. That's why, parang ganun. That was my proudest moment.
My moment isn't really a moment. It's not a particular event. I think it's something very similar to Kuya Sam in that it's a feeling that I've had within me during my time as a psychology student, even if I'm not done with my first year yet. It's the fact that even despite all of the non-major subjects trying to drag me or my grades down, whether that be math or whether that be the dozens of activities that maybe this subject might give us or this teacher might give us, not naming any names, but despite all of that, I think what's been keeping me going, what makes me proud, is that there's the potentiality of me doing good in this world. Just like Sam said, the potentiality of me as maybe a future psychologist or anyone working in the social sciences, for me to actually change the world, maybe not with, technology, maybe not with the traditional ways of changing the world through medicine or engineering, but through changing the world through our own methods as a psychologist, through changing the world, or at the very least, starting with our community again, with our locality, and seeing if maybe this soft science really has something to prove, if this soft science really has, this soft science really is what Ma'am CJ tells us, something that is really powerful, that can really fundamentally change the mindsets and eventually the collective mindsets of people. And so what really keeps me going throughout my first year is psychology simply as a subject. It's really not about any of the other subjects for me at this point. I've really been interested in introduction to psychology through psych stats, whether that be lecture or laboratory. It's been something that, okay, maybe it's hard at times, especially through lecture, and maybe it's hard at times, especially through our research, but I've never had a bad moment. I've never felt like I couldn't do it. I've always felt like maybe not obligated, but I've always felt motivated to accomplish whatever sort of task or activity that I had. And so that's what keeps me the proudest, is that I have pride in the work that I do and pride in whatever subject I take. That's basically my experience so far.
Ate Aki, I have a question pala for you. Ito na, in relation from you going to Bali, did you even feel, di ba, since you were alone in that time, ikaw lang, were you feeling a sense of like, parang ako lang yung nandito, bakit wala akong katulungan and stuff like those?
just to give a bit more context as well, in my panel, I was the only undergrad. All of them, Dr. Nathan Steele and the others, were already, veterans in the field. And they were looking at me when I was presenting like I was this 5-year-old singing ABCD so well. So they were smiling. But there was pressure. But then again, as John said, there was also pride. I'm an upcoming third-year student and I'm already here. I'm presenting my local research, our local research that my groupmates and I did. So there was this sense of pride and, of course, a lot of pressure, but more so on the pride part. Parang, this is my I made it moment. Okay. So yeah, to those of you who are planning to present your papers, it's a way of, number one, boosting your self-esteem, and of course, what do you call this one? I'm sorry, I'm doing a hand gesture here. I'm sure you can see it. It's a way of expanding your networks. You get to meet, you don't know, maybe future mentors that you can call once you are already in the field. So yes, go out there, submit your abstracts, shoot your shot, and go present your paper. Okay.
So in relation to that, since currently right now, coming second year, we're hoping and planning to present our papers, lalo sa field methods, in, let's say, international conferences rin. And there are various open conferences that are available for us to pursue across the Philippine borders. So are there any tips that you can give us, since we don't know, or we don't have a hint on what we are going to expect when we present our papers to the international community?
Oh my goodness. I have to recall what exactly we did, Sam and the rest of the group. But like every conference kasi, they have their own preferences. You just have to stick with their guidelines. Parang meron namang universal format, but there's just little tweaks. Like parang yung number of minutes, presentation, ano yung pagkakasunod-sunod. Parang they're very specific naman. They will tell you beforehand kung ano yung gusto nilang makita. So yeah, just submit and submit and submit. But pick your just pick a few. Wag naman lahat because it's, just not budget friendly that way.
We have another question here stating, in what ways has your understanding of human behavior influenced your relationships or interactions with others? First off, I think I've become a bit more self-conscious in the way that I interact with people, in the way that I speak to them. Not in necessarily a bad way. Self-conscious in the sense that I'm becoming more empathic, more compassionate in the way I speak to other people. Not that I was a terrible person before, but essentially, I'm just trying to, apply a lot of what I learned from my psychology subjects into my daily life, in the sense that a lot of people are carrying a lot more baggage than they show. A lot of people are basically holding the weight of the world, of their world, on their shoulders. And sometimes we don't see that. Sometimes they don't want to show us that. And so when that happens, I think that we just have to be considerate, have to be respectful, and try not to push any boundaries that you know you can't push. Try not to open any wounds that maybe they have. If you, how do I say this? I have a friend, kasi I have a friend, and so she's holding a lot of emotional weight, let's say. She's holding a lot of history behind her, but she doesn't show it, right? You can't know that, especially if they don't want to tell you. And sometimes you can't force people to tell you things. And so what's best to do in that situation, or what I found, or at least what I found from applying my psychology, lectures or subjects, or just the general field of human behavior, right, was really just to be there for them when they need it the most. Maybe not there for them to pry, maybe not to be there for them to really poke and prod at whatever's bothering them. Something that has held true to me, or something that I've held within me, that's Ma'am CJ said again, was during her discussion about suicide. Right, and so there are steps to suicide, or stages before one commits suicide, and that's through, I forget, but there's stuff like ideation, there's stuff like planning, there's stuff such as the last part, which is actually attaining the weapon for suicide. And so sometimes during that ideation stage, or during that planning stage, when especially there's no one else around them. This is another tangent. Another ethic of the AP, or Psychological Association of the Philippines, one of their ethics or code of ethics was, how do I say this, was essentially about, second one ba yun? How do I say this? Nakalimutan niyo na. Sorry for the, sorry for the stutter here.
Breaking the confidentiality.
No, it was about
Treating
humans not dignity or not. It was basically being there for them when no other professionals were around. So basically, like, normally you shouldn't interfere, you should leave it to a professional, but if there's no other professional around and you're the only one that they can rely on, you might as well be there. You should be there because they're your friend, right? And so sometimes being there is more important than, or sometimes being there is just enough. Overall, how psychology or how this course has affected me in interacting with other humans or other people was that to be there for people when they need it the most. To be not just strong or not just resilient, but to be understanding, because people can be strong, people can be resilient, but sometimes they aren't understanding of other people's problems. They can be there, but they aren't present. You know what I mean? That's what psychology has taught me so far.
So this may be like an opposite of what John has said for me, since prior to entering psychology, I really am viewing myself as someone who is really catering towards various people, and who is really, I was having this motto in life, like, no matter what the world may bring, just always be kind towards other people. So that's something I would really, or something that I have been carrying all throughout my life. But through psychology, however, I was thinking, lalo sa sinabi ni Ma'am M sa amin, ay, pag Sikolohiya na kayo, or pag we are already psychologists now, and if you really want to help people, let us know the limits. That hindi lahat ng problema nila ay kailangan nating maging burden para sa atin. So that's something that really struck me. Since I have been so much been lenient towards other people, I have been so much, let's say, caring for other people, that it became too much in the sense that it was already being, or it's not really helping them in the long run. Since they are too dependent now, they are being lenient towards you. It hinders that psychological growth that they have now for themselves. So our role rin as psychologists is to really understand the balance on what we need to, how to treat others, and how we would cater for others' feelings. Para hindi nila tayo parating maging, they won't always view us as someone who would be there to solve their problems for them. But our goal as psychologists in the future, or in the making, is to help people solve the problems for themselves also. Since it is inherent or intrinsic for people to have the capacity to solve their problems, we are just there to make them realize what are the methods or what are the strategies that they would have to take for themselves in order for them to be that strong, resilient, and independent person that they are, to achieve that psychological growth that we are saying. So we as psychologists, we are just there to help them, but not really help them all throughout, na parati na lang na tayo yung kanilang sandigan. So parang we don't want people, or para sa atin, we don't want them to have that hindrance for their growth. For example, lalo sa when it comes to in a classroom setting, lalo sa mga group works. So I was always having a thought na, okay, ano yung problema mo? Bakit hindi ako gumagawa ng mga to? At sinasabi ko naman sa aking sarili na, okay, talagang may problema siya in terms of sa kanilang bahay or personal problems that they have, personal conflicts. And I was just giving them that excuse. Like, oh, it's okay. Focus muna sa problem mo. Don't focus much on the tasks that we are having at bay or the tasks that we have at school. Yun yung sinasabi ko, because of that kindness na sinasabi ko sa aking sarili, you have to treat people with that same kind of level. But then I realized na parang in the long run, they would just take advantage of that. There are a lot of people who would do that. And even now, parang you have to set that boundaries also. Even if close friend mo siya, even if parang may problema siya na hindi mo naman responsibilidad to bear that problem with it. It is important, yes, for you to connect with each other. It's important for you to at least have that sense of help for each other. But it doesn't go all the way. It doesn't go. There must always be a bound to it. There's always that limitation that we must set in order for them also to help themselves, in order for us to not be tormented also by their problems. Because what better way that we can help people if we are suffering also in helping them. So it's better if we also help them while we are also helping ourselves to help them. So there's that balance. Diba? Pag sabi ng, for example, this analogy, when it comes to riding in airplanes, when oxygen masks are dropped, first help yourself before helping those others. So parang yun rin ang task natin. We must first help ourselves before we are going to help other people. Kasi we need to be the best versions of ourselves to give towards other people. Boundaries are always important when it comes to helping professionally in our field of study.
Actually, I could say the same. Because for me, before, I was really, parang ako yung type of person, ako yung type of friend na I would cater to everyone's needs. Like, everyone. Ganon. And I've always wondered kung bakit sobra akong exhausted, mentally drained, passive, parang ghost. And then I realized I've been doing that all along. So parang psychology as well. Because Ma'am M, I don't know if this was first year, ang firm ng pagkakasabi niya, you cannot give what you do not have. So parang, okay, that was eye-opening for me because, you know, as a psych major, how can I help people if I can't even help myself? Parang it's really important, yes, as Sam has said, setting boundaries, because as Ma'am M also said, you cannot give what you do not have. Na para bang, in connection to what he also said, about there's this analogy about fish and eating, na parang there's a hungry person, and then if you always fish for this person, yes, they will be able to eat, but without you, they won't be able to eat. So it's better if you teach them how to fish so that they will not be hungry. Because in the clinical setting, the ultimate goal of a psychologist or a psych professional is to teach the client how to bear their cross. Do not carry it for them. Sige. Sa una, siguro, you assist them, ganyan. Pero eventually, in the long run, you want parang to build them in a way na they will be able to carry it on their own. Because, diba, how can that person live a fulfilling, happy life if hindi nila kaya? So parang yun. Psychology, in terms of how I deal with people, is also practicing boundaries because I'm too empathic. I try to carry everyone's burdens na parang, okay, so yeah, practicing boundaries because we cannot give what we do not have.
So, going on now to our another question that we have. Has this course impacted your own beliefs? It can be anything from political to religious or both in general. So for me, yes, both political and religious really has been impacted because of psychology. From my understanding, from the teachings that our professors has given towards us, it really changed my perspectives when it comes to politics and religion. So firstly, let me just delve into religion in the first place. So for religion, my belief is, of course, I'm a Baptist, but I'm not that very conservative. I hate conservatism if you ask me. I really don't like conservatives. Even though my parents may be conservative, even though majority of my family may be conservative, but for me, I would really destroy that, let's say, generation of conservativeness. Parang sinasabi natin na your parents would have a very vast influence on you. Ang daming tao nang sasabi nun. But I mean, as students in psychology, we understand that there are many influences that can deter ourselves from, let's say, even generational trauma, or even from the influence of or the strong influence of our family. Let's say even Bandura said that social learning from our peers would also influence us on how we would want to reshape our life. So in terms of religion, I would really believe in a more liberated kind of Christianity, in a sense that why are you going to persecute or shame members of the LGBT? Why are you going to shame and persecute members of the minority because they don't just align with your belief or the hardcore belief that you have? Why are you hindering themselves when Jesus in the first place was in fact someone who would want to bring change, someone who is liberated, diba? To challenge the status quo that was going on in his time. And as ourselves, using that example, let us then challenge also the status quo that we have in order to bring change out of the love that we are going to bring. Because God, again, is the love that has. The center of God is love in the first place. If we do not share that same kind of sentiment, then what are we doing in following God in the first place? So that's something that I would really want, that psychology has brought out into me. That a religion, you don't have to be conforming towards the religion of your parents. You don't have to be conforming towards the religion of their family. find it in yourself what you really believe in, and make sure that it is really for the better, that you are fighting for a cause that would bring out the greatest change. And from religion, let us now go to politics. For me, in terms of politics in the political spectrum, I would say that in the American political spectrum, I would say that I am a Democrat, liberal, left wing. So in that sense, I am really for social justice, activism, protesting against the aggressors in authority in government. So that is something that I really would want to do. You know, be an advocate for the voiceless, to be against those politicians who are really tampering with the rights of people. So that's something that psychology would also have to be a great influence in me. Especially sa mga, let's say, people who are having that distorted ideology. Kasi psychology would say that politicians, especially in the Philippines, are really distorting the minds. Let's say through propaganda, that they are really wanting to change the beliefs of people to align towards what they really want to do. And as a result of that distortion, it would be for their benefit. Because they now have the avenue for corruption. They now have the avenue to really manipulate the resources that should have been in control by the people, for the people. That is what the government should be doing. But instead, we are seeing right now, the government is actually not doing what they are mandated to do. They are now looking out for themselves. We are, diba, since we are social scientists, we understand these aspects of society. We must also share that sentiment that we have. Parang, what's the use that we are learning these things in school if we don't apply it in the real world? If we don't encourage people to have or to broaden their perspectives regarding these issues? Kasi this is the very impact that society or that psychology can bring. Because we understand much of the human behavior, because we understand much on what is society, and that bridging equation would mean we understand much of what is going on in religion, we understand much of what is going on with politics, and we could really deduce what factors could influence people into behaving this certain way. So that's something that we must really consider ourselves into.
A little bit of a deviation from what Kuya Sam said. It's not really about religion or politics. It's more of an internalized behavior or belief that I had. That was sourcing what was basically self-esteem and self-confidence from the external world or from other people, right? And so what I always believed back then, growing up from, I don't know, my nursery days, maybe even through my preparatory to my elementary, junior high school, and even senior high school, was always that validation, that confidence, that esteem always was provided by the people around you. It never really came from yourself. That's what I believed, right? And so I think what a lot of healthy psychology and through studying psychology and the human behavior has made me realize was that self-esteem, by its definition, isn't really sourced from other people. It's what you believe yourself to be. It's what you believe your value to be, right? And so when we attribute a lot of that value from the expectations or the assumptions of other people, a lot of that self-esteem can get skewed, right? Your belief of yourself like wavers. Your faith in your abilities and your confidence, in the sense that when we separate esteem from confidence, esteem is your value in yourself, and confidence is your value in your skills or what you can do. And so I believed a lot of that back then was, again, from other people or what came from other people. And so what psychology made me realize is that for the most part, a lot of your esteem, a lot of your value really shouldn't come from other people. Why? Because people's expectations are, how do I say this, very dynamic in the sense that they can only expect what they want from you, and sometimes what people want from you isn't the best thing for you. Sometimes the best thing for you is maybe prioritizing yourself, maybe sometimes prioritizing your mental health, and in academics, maybe through my parents, sometimes what's the best thing for you is not what they necessarily want. Maybe it isn't the highest grades, maybe it isn't the best performance, maybe what you need at that moment or what yourself needs at that moment is just take a moment and stop, to breathe, and to basically not become the number in your report card, right? Because people aren't numbers, just like in psychology. People aren't numbers at the end of the day. People are people. People have emotions. Yes, we quantify them to gather data and whatnot, but at the end of the day, when you're face to face with a person, you don't see them as numbers, right? You don't see them as people that need to be calculated. You don't define them by maybe their height or their weight, or you don't define them by what grades they have. And so that's something that psychology has helped me realize, or that helped me believe, that I'm not a number. I'm not a statistic. I'm not what everyone expects of me, or I'm not what everyone assumes of me. I'm my own person, in that I have my own beliefs. I have things that, or I have foundations within me that maybe shouldn't be shaken up by other people, that shouldn't be defined by other people, that I can ground myself, and that I can ground my own ideologies, I can ground my own expectations through my own efforts and through my own energy or motivation at that time, at that moment. In that maybe sometimes, I'm not saying that it's in general, but maybe sometimes people around you don't really matter that much. That's not
So
really,
no matter.
not really like that. That's not the most kindest way of saying it, but you get what I mean, right? In the sense that you shouldn't let the expectations of people really matter too much for you, because at the end of the day, you are your own person. I'm not my father. I'm not my mother. I'm not what this teacher thinks of me. And so basically the belief of me outsourcing my self-esteem and self-confidence through other people has basically been unlearned through psychology and through a lot of healthy teachers and professors and instructors such as Mom M and Mom CJ, who have been very compassionate, or at least very understanding in the way that they, expect of us, right? And so that's something that I'm very grateful for in my psychology course so far.
I think I'm gonna be crucified for my answer, but okay. So for me naman, in the context of politics, don't judge me, please. I will be crucified for this. I am already hearing my classmates. I was WAS past tense. Apologist. Can you please put that? Anyway, but being a psych major is there's this sense of awakening, of parang suddenly seeing things in a clearer perspective. It's like before, the world was this foreign language that you hear but you don't really understand. And when you get into psychology, when you study psychology, you embody, you internalize, you start to understand. Parang you see things, you see the system, you see the power play, and then you begin to care. Yun, parang consistent yung theme sa akin eh. I have begun to care about the people, and yeah, there was really rapid growth, if I may say, on my part in terms of that. Parang na din across all contexts, like not just politics but also religious. I have begun questioning. I'm so sorry. Na parang iniisip ko, what if Barnum effect lang to? Like, because the mind is powerful, diba? You now understand manipulation. I now understand like yung mga influences and all that. And I have begun questioning. And I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing. But yeah, fourth year is just over the corner and we'll see. So, now we move on to the people. What are our thoughts about the psych peeps, our peers, or even some of our professors? For me, di ba, sinabi ko naman, engineering was my first priority. But I'm here, no regrets, 90% because of the people. Like, I genuinely believe that if hindi ako psych major, I wouldn't be as open-minded and as informed as I am today. Because of the people. Parang in psych you find the most open-minded ones. You find the most creative individuals. You find the most edgy. You find the most, parang the diversity of talent is there. Na parang in psych you cannot ask sino't kalalaingan. You're going to have to ask sino't kalalaingan in this aspect, because you just see the scatter of talents everywhere. And I just really love that there's a branding for psych. Wow, promotion po no. So come to psych. There's this branding that we have been carrying since our first year, na sinasabi nila we are able to tell a psych major from a distance just because of their aura, their demeanor, but most importantly, the substance they carry. So yeah, I've been loving all the psych peeps, my friends, my classmates, my juniors were so proud of you, 𝙏𝙏𝙚, and really, of course, our professors, especially, pwede mo name drop? Especially, I have top 2 favorites, but Ma'am Anna, Ma'am CJ, Ma'am M, and everyone, Ma'am Jess, Ma'am Janica, they're just very amazing. Parang, I really like it na parang the way they teach is not just textbook eh. Parang immersion, kumbaga. Na you're just changed with every class. You're just not the same. And that's what I love about the psychology people. And I'm so glad I'm a psych major. That's all I can say.
Yes, I'm really excited also to share my part in this. I would share the same sentiments as Ate Aki here. So in terms of my collaboration with peers, my friends, even our professors, so I will go back into coming why I considered psychology in the first place, and especially MMSU. So I was a bit skeptical since what I want is to go far away from my home. I was eyeing to study hopefully in Manila and whatnot, but because of some considerations that come in play, I eventually came here in MMSU as compared in other near universities. Thank God I've really pushed my boundaries into coming here in MMSU, because really, number one, I would agree, the people is really what gives the amazing feeling and the fulfillment that you're trying to achieve while you are taking this course. Na parang no matter how hard it would be, but because of these people, it would be meaningful for you to achieve this or to study in the long run. So from our friends, even though that there are some people who are like meh and stuff like those, and hindi talaga maalis yung mga people na ganun. But despite that, hindi lang people, even professors na medyo so-so yung kahit marami sila, but because of the very few people that really brings out that meaning. Especially shout out sa mga professors namin, Ma'am Anna, Ma'am CJ, Ma'am M2. They are really the ones who give psychology that broader perspective, that deep meaning that is not really surface level. But it makes you love the course because of how they love it also. They share that same love and you get influenced by that love that they show in the course that we are taking currently. So for friends naman, there really is a very vibrant amount of people in psych, and parang it's surprising to think that you would have common denominators among each and every one of you. Pag sinasabi, lalo si Ma'am M, sinasabi niya, pag introvert kayo, choose the right course for you, welcome to psychology. Yun ang sinasabi niya parati. So yeah, I also am considering myself as an introvert since I am just very vocal, I'm just very yapping when I'm comfortable with other people around me. And in that sense, it really gives psychology that beauty in it. Because of the people that is around you, it has become really influential. So that's one thing that I would want to share towards you on how important it is to build connections while you are at it in this university. While you are at it in not just in psychology, but studying college in general or studying in general. That connection that you seek from other people is something that would help you in the long run. Kasi pag napapagod ka man, you can go to them. They can help you also. That is the essence of collaboration. When there's collaboration, there's always that connection. And that hopefully would last your lifetime. When time comes that when we are already professionals, we look back to the people who is really helping us in achieving the dreams that we have made.
First off, I want to give a shout out to my section, Psychology 1B, Psych 1B. If they're listening right now, thank you so much for making my psychology experience much, much better. So in terms of, again, my peers and friends, I think I can say with certainty so far that my section and the people that I've met so far have been one of the healthiest, non-toxic, non-competitive environments that I've ever been in. And I'm really thankful because a lot of the issues that I struggled with in the past was because of those, not necessarily toxic, but very competitive or very rigorous people who really just wanted to, how do I say this, compete, right? And so what I'm really thankful for in Psych 1D is that the pressure of ACADS is still there, but the pressure of ACADS isn't brought about by them. It's basically just brought about by the subject itself and the lessons and stuff. What I really love about the peers that I've met so far is that we've never really become lax in academics in the sense that we don't take it seriously. It's not like that. We still take it seriously, but it's not to the point where I stop becoming friends with other people. And that's something that I've struggled with in the past because of hyper competition, because of an environment that fostered that. I wasn't really friends with much of my section, right? And so what I'm really thankful for, again, is that our section still fosters academic responsibility without fostering that competition, without fostering that toxic environment, right? And we still bring each other up at the end of the day. Instead of pressuring each other to do this or do that, we help each other. We bring ourselves up. We basically support each other. When one person, when one person struggles, all of us go in and all of us help that person. And as you can see that, especially in our GC, we send a lot of our viewers, we send a lot of our notes to each other. We lecture each other a lot. And so I really love that about us in the sense that we are, how do I say this? We are academic collaborators, and that's not something that I've ever felt before, right? Next to my teachers, shout out again to Ma'am CJ and Ma'am M. And even through my non-psychological professors such as Sir Lester and Ma'am Leslie, them in particular, I really like them because one thing that I've always been stuck with in high school was that teachers were always so constricted by whatever curriculum tried to bind them, right? They've always had a very one-note type of teaching. Not all of them obviously had differences and whatnot. I'm not going to say that all of them were bad. And I'm not even saying that any of them were bad, but it's the teaching methods. It's the pedagogy that these teachers were taught with, in the sense that they're still bound by curriculums, but the way they teach really is very free. It's very liberated from what a lot of high school teachers have to go with. A lot of them are very hands-on. Some of them aren't, but some of them being not hands-on actually helps, especially in our psychological statistics. I think Ma'am CJ not being more hands-on with us actually helps foster a lot more learning with each other. And so what I'm very thankful for is learning techniques of these teachers, in the sense that they allow us to thrive within their own space, but they don't constrict us within their own space. They don't constrict us with their teaching methods. And so that's what I'm very thankful for in terms of my teachers so far here in MMSU.
And we're down to the last segment. We're gonna look back. So John, what do you want to ask Sam about second year?
It's a very simple question, but I want you to give more elaboration on it. It's a very simple question lang. It's because it's something that I really hold dear to me, in the sense that it should always be the case every time. I don't want to study if this isn't the case. And I expect that for there to be pitfalls and downfalls sometimes, but all I want to ask is, compared to first year, compared to your experience so far in second year, in terms of enjoyment in studying, in terms of enjoyment in going into class every day and interacting with your classmates and your teachers, has anything changed? Has your enjoyment or happiness in general declined? Has it rised? Basically, do you still enjoy studying the same way that you did in first year, or has anything changed at all?
If there's only one thing that has changed and that has risen, is exhaustion.
Okay.
So, even though the units that we are taking as psychology students are lesser compared to other courses like, let's say, nursing, na marami nagsasabi, psychology, ilang units kayo? 20, bakit parang pagod na pagod ka? There are a lot of people who is questioning that academic load that we bear, but without even giving regard to what we really do. They don't understand what we really do as psych students. So yes, there's nothing that has been changing. In fact, my enjoyment and my happiness in studying actually grew more when I progress now to second year, and hopefully more into third year and into fourth year, and even in further studies. So that's something that within me, something that I would feel that would not change, but rather would eventually grow more. It is that happiness and enjoyment into studying psychology. So when it comes to that, there was really no moments in me that I felt that decline or that regret. It was only moments of, let's say, wait lang, teka lang, ayaw ko muna, pwedeng bukas na lang. So let's say that, what do you call that, procrastination and cramming, and something that's like a common denominator or a common thing for us to do also, given that numerous projects that we have to finish. So it is really not something that would make it for me to stop doing it, but rather just pause and then, instances of breathing in first and then continuing on that work again with more joy, with more passion. So that is something that you would hopefully expect when you continue on the other levels of study. That you will not grow out of happiness. Exhaustion, yes. Tardiness, yes. Even sleep is becoming very essential for me. If there's one thing that I would really want and enjoy to do also aside from studying is sleeping. So yeah, that's something that I would really look forward into always. That sleep. Kasi sleep naman talaga, parang even Ma'am M is pointing out, kailangan yung matulog. Kasi sleeping really comes a long way. Aside from enjoying it, it is something that would really help you also. That would be beneficial for your studies. So that's something that I would hope for you first years, sa mga addings namin the first years, that you would see the enjoyment grow more as you continue on the studies that you have.
Okay, ikaw naman, Kuya. Sam, what do you want to ask our senior here, Aki, about her experience as a third-year student?
So, Ate, I would hopefully when we talk about this, we would have a series of discussions into the expectations of us second years progressing into third years now in less than 1 month already. So one question that I would want to ask from you, Ate, would be, what's your favorite subject or course so far in third year?
I'm already laughing. I have the answer in my mind. Well, third year is tired year for a reason. So siguro, for me, the most enjoyable subject in third year is nasa first sem. It's 𝙑psych. Because our 𝙑psych was Mom CJ. Yes, it could be teacher factor, like 80%, but the subject is very interesting. It's about, from infanthood and then the lifespans. You study the lifespans and just the changes that you see there. It's just really very interesting for me personally. I don't know if you will enjoy that or if you guys will enjoy that. But yeah, Cog Psych is also good. And psychophysics, because you get into the parang math aspect na naman ng psych. But that's just for me, okay? Because I was supposed to be an engineer. But yeah, 𝙑psych for me. 𝙑psych.
Now, for both of my seniors, Kuya Sam, Ate Aki, is there anything you wish you would have done differently in your previous years?
I'd go first. There's one thing that I would have done differently when I was in first year. And I was in first sem. I wish that I could have studied better in algebra and trigonometry. So, kasi sa akin naman, I really have that grudge when it comes to numbers. It goes way back when I was in elementary. Parang even though it's a simple math problem, my mind would automatically shut off and that hatred for numbers in me would bring out. So that clouds my mind. Pero when it comes to other subjects or other related subjects when it comes to numbers, like statistics, like physics, wala namang problema sa akin yun. But when it comes to math in itself, parang dun na nagkakaroon ng problema for me. So it really was a nightmare having to take algebra and trigonometry very first in the college life. Parang yun yung ungang bungad sa akin ng college. That nightmare when it comes to numbers, lalo pa yung yeah, I'd leave it at that. But yeah, that's something that I would have done differently. Pero no regrets naman in this moment now in time. All the other aspects in terms of studying psychology courses, yeah, it's just really enjoying for me to be able to undertake this course.
Siguro for me naman, very minor din. It's just a little something in first year as well. Second sem, Math 11. I wish I attended my classes more because I feel like I could have been dropped if I continued my absences back then because the class was so early, okay? And back then, I don't know, I tend to sleep a lot noon. So hindi ako nagigising ng maaga. Paggising ko, like half of the class siguro tapos na, and then I would go there and oops, patapos na yung klase. And it was Math 11. It was supposed to be a fun subject, me being a math lover. But yeah, that's my regret. And there were repercussions I will not be discussing anyway. Yeah. So yeah, please do not absent yourselves from your classes. You will miss out on a lot.
Next question for our last segment. How has this course shaped your perspective on your career path? For me, personally, my career paths, plural, have always been in different trajectories. In the sense that during my elementary days, during my high school, junior high school, and senior high school days, they've all been in different trajectories in the sense that none of them were really related to each other. For example, when I was in elementary school, sometimes I still think of it now as something serious. I always wanted to be an astronaut or working in the space industry or in the sciences, in physics specifically. I've always loved these sciences. That's why my favorite subjects growing up were always science, biology, chemistry, physics. I've always loved those. During high school, I wanted to be a businessman. So I wanted to go into ABM, going into senior high school. During senior high school, I wanted to be an engineer, a computer engineer. And now in college, I mean, unless I, drop out or switch courses, I guess I'm stuck here in psychology. But what's really shaped me during my psychology experience so far is that now I'm very grounded in reality into what I really want. Not that I'm not dreaming or not hoping of anything big or large anymore, but I've become a bit more mature in how I want my career to turn out, in how I want my life to turn out in the future. As, hopefully an up-and-coming psychologist, because I do plan on taking the board exam and I do plan on getting myself that little, how do I say that? That little badge or like PSY, PSD, title, because I do plan on getting myself a title. And so, yeah, that's basically the trajectory of what I think my life will go so far. Obviously, I can't predict everything and I can't expect everything to stay into the realm of what my expectations are, but I think psychology has helped me ground myself into the social sciences in particular. Maybe not in maybe I won't be a psychologist, maybe I won't be a psychometrician, maybe I won't be, any of those. However, I think I've ground myself to the point where social sciences, people, behavior, and the way they think and act, I think that that's where my life is headed so far. I think that's what I want. I mean, I know that's what I want now because of how I've enjoyed psychology so far. And so in terms of career profession or careers, social sciences, I love that. I love psychology so far. Hopefully, I get to love it even more as I progress through my years.
So me and John would share like the same kind of situation. So how would I start this? Okay, let me go back towards what I was dreaming about when I was still a kid in elementary. So in my wildest aspects, I was always viewing myself as someone who would lead something, or someone who has authority to change some things. So I was dreaming of becoming the president of the country when I was still in elementary. So I was really interested in the power dynamics in politics in that sense, but it was really more on commanding and controlling. So that was my immature state back then. And then hindi lang dun, it was not just settled into being a president in the Philippines or in a certain country. Parang iniisip ko rin, what more power can they have? I was having that God complex na, what if I become the president of the universe instead? So yun yung sinasabi ko sa aking sarili. So it was really, that was my vision when I was still in elementary. But then, progressing into high school, I had that dream naman of becoming now a doctor. I was influenced by my pediatrician back then. My late pediatrician actually. So we really had that connection now between me and her back then. When I was still a kid going to her clinic and having checkups, I was really intrigued by what she does. And she was also passionate in what she does, especially towards me. So that's something that was influencing me to become a doctor. So I was going all out na rin into writing. Parang di ba sa mga doctors, they are having their own style of prescriptions. They have their own template So ako rin, nagprint rin ako ng aking sariling template ng ganun. Sinasabi ko, Dr. Samuel Bermudez-Canamberlo, MD. Tapos dami kong degrees na pinapakita doon. And yung specialty ko na sinasabi ko na I would be a cardiologist and stuff like those. Tapos yun rin. And I also bought some suturing kits. So for me to practice suturing. And I really did enjoy that. But then I had this, what do you call that? Crisis. Hindi man crisis, pero thought or dilemma in me. I was looking at my subjects. Me and John has the same sentiment when it comes to science. I really enjoyed science. Back then, when I was in elementary, I was joining science contests. And even in high school, I really enjoyed science. And I was even joining international seminars, webinars about science, about physics. And I got to meet a lot of people in science, like in the likes of Nobel Prize laureates, like Dr. Donna Kirkland, who won the Nobel Prize in optics. So that's even in astronauts in NASA, who have been dealing with projects like the James Webb Telescope. We got to meet with them and to discuss with them and to question them about what they are doing. So that's something that really intrigued me into really going into the passion of science. But looking back again, I was seeing my grades. It was consistent. Why are my grades in the social studies significantly higher than that of what I am really passionate about? I was enjoying social studies back then. Yung aral ni panlipunan, history, and stuff like those. Parang sinasabi ko, tinitingnan ko yung report card ko, sila yung very mataas yung aking grade as compared sa talagang gusto ko sana. So I was like having that contemplation now when in senior high school. Would I either go to HUMS or would I go to STEM? Would I go to the humanities or fast track now myself in the scientific venture? But then my consideration was to go to STEM would be really to have more opportunities. So that's why I went into STEM. And the first research that I did in STEM was rooted in social sciences. It was really a challenging research rin for me in my age to do that, where I was going to explore the life of persons deprived of liberty. So I was having a research rooted towards our jail systems. So I was really having that even drive in me. Okay, let's just pursue this, even though it's hard to get permits. So eventually, the government, in our local government, gave me permission to conduct that research in jails. So that gave me the perspective. I was now meeting actual inmates face to face for this research that a high school student is doing. So this is me, naive in the things that I do. But then I come to realize from my interactions with the inmates, their stories. That's really what brought me now closer towards the social sciences. From connecting with people, from people with their various backgrounds who would recall you're now sitting down with what people view as criminals, what people view as bad people. But from their stories, we can see that they are not actually bad people. Now you get hints of the social aspects in life, the social problems in life. One of the reasons why they are in jail in the first place, they were there because of injustice. People have been framing them. Political families have been framing them for their own political views. That's why they are now suffering. Now this gave me an eye-opening. If this is happening here, what if in a broader perspective in society, it is happening all throughout? So in that sense now, that is where the social sciences have given me the meaning in my life. So there may be a reason bakit nang tataas ang grades ko noon sa social sciences as compared sa passion ko noon in terms of science and stuff like those. So that drive arose in me and I have carried that through college. So I have no regrets now. The career path from law to medicine, parang that's the first reason why I chose psychology, to bridge that gap. But I feel it is now changing. I don't see myself as a lawyer now. I don't see myself as a doctor now. I see myself as someone who is a social scientist who would eventually help society in the field that we are trying to study in psychology. And I would really want to go towards higher learning and to bring that learning that I have for the Filipino people. So that's something that is really how psychology has shaped my career. It has been reinforcing that, let's say, shadow of social sciences that has been bringing up towards my early days. And now, I can really say that I would be happy now to pursue psychology in its higher sense, psychology in its higher learning. So yes, I would also want that, let's say, RPM, RPSY in my name. And I would hopefully to add that PhD also, to get that higher sense of learning. Parang psychology, when you enter it, you don't know what you're doing. But then, as it is continuing to be reinforced, yeah, I agree with what you said. You're now being grounded towards what psychology has brought into you, and that grounded thing that psychology has brought into you is now serving as a guide for you to find out what you are really passionate about. Who knows? Maybe there are things from your childhood that you would consider as shadows, but they eventually became or becomes the foundation of your career work in the future.
For me naman, siguro, yung pang-ground ng psych sa akin is more personal. Because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a fairy. I mean, why are those my dreams? Maybe I'm normal, okay? I wanted to be a fairy. But I realized, it's not a real job. Okay, so... And then I wanted to be a criminal for some reason. I don't know. And then as I grew older, parang nag-iba-iba siya. I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to be an astronaut. In grade 10, I wanted to be a pilot. My parents already found a flying school and then they were just asking me, magtutuloy ka? Joke lang, hindi pala. Tapos, ayun, parang psychology has grounded me in the sense that it made me realize na parang it's okay if I like a lot of things. I just have so much interests kasi. So, siguro for me, maybe I won't take the board exam. Maybe you will see me studying again, maybe take up engineering or, being a full-time fairy. Because there's no shame in parang wanting what you want. So yeah. And siguro for me, psychology is, kasi I believe na it's everywhere. It's something na you can carry whatever next step you go into, you plan into. So, parang, for me is, yung undergraduate ko, it's really something more of a foundation. Kumbaga, psychology is a foundation for whatever I choose to do next. Whether I will be a pilot, or an engineer or anything, basta I know that I will be carrying the learnings and the values that psych has instilled in me. So ayun. We also have a question here that said, do you think change in terms of psychology or the psychological world is becoming faster or slower in modern times, and why? Personally, you can please correct me if I'm too green or naive. I think it's becoming faster. Especially the kids. I'm beginning to worry. What is this brain rot core that's happening? Because you really see the psychology behind how their minds develop because of that. You observe the different generations of people and you can see the contrast with how they act. Parang, yung mga bata kasi ngayon, because they were given the privilege of having a screen time at an early age, na sometimes wala pang guidance ng parents. They can just hold the tablet or phone for hours and hindi na monitor kung ano yung nakikita nila. And parang yun na yung influence nila. That's becoming the major influence na shaping their perspective on things, na parang even the way they speak, what is 𝐒𝐲𝐳𝐿? Diba? I don't understand. Please don't talk to me, kid. Parang ganon. So, I think it's faster for me. For me lang.
Ate, I think you're not very Sigma. But yeah, aside from that, I have to agree. Psychology, in terms of changing the world, is really fast now compared to what we were going back in the early 1900s. Where psychology was really upbringing now, or where the foundations of psychology was laid out. So if it weren't for psychology, we really wouldn't understand much of the world that is around us, much of the people, much of our families. There is still that naiveness. We are still ignorant of very numerous things when it comes to an individual level into a societal level. So for example, in our culture as Filipinos, parati nating isinusumbat yung utang na loob towards other people. Bakit kaya, especially for older generations, we can see it in social media, even in our interactions with them, how they are quick to judge the generation that is going on now. How they are quick to have a say. Because number one, they are not the ones who is really not aware of what's happening much. But because of psychology, and especially for us psychology students, we really get to understand why there are a lot of people now, especially in terms of the millennials going to Gen Z, how they are deviating away from that centralized concept of family ties, family bonding, that blood is thicker than water. So from psychological underpinnings, we can get, there has been already a series of, let's say, for some cases, generational trauma That is why they decided to break that cycle. The people in psychology who laid that foundation into understanding why there are people who is breaking away from these types or deviating away from what you think is the norms. Because psychology, as I have said in the earlier parts of this podcast, we really set out to challenge the status quo. So from then on, we get to get more understandings, even in certain psychopathologies. Let's say autism, ADHD, MPD or DID now. A lot of people from the past really views this, let's say witchcraft. They view it as someone who is possessed by demons. They see someone as someone who is really not a person anymore. They see it as an animal, having animal instincts. But because of psychology, we get to understand why or what is the cause of these things. And that is why it has has changed our perspective also in a larger sense. The realities of the psychopathologies that is going on. Depression is going on, and that is something that we must recognize. And in terms of mental health, that is also something that psychology has brought upon our world. We start to care more now about people. Hindi natin isinusumbat na yung mga cultural underpinnings na we have innately towards us, not just in the Filipino culture but various cultures around the world. There's always something common when it comes to psychology across human behaviors. And that is something that is already fast-tracked in our understanding of the human world, especially for the generation now. That's like what Ate Aki has laid out, the framework of kids in this generation being exposed to screens. We really caught that early on. We already have definitions on what is going on in that sense. So if we really have that early attention to these certain issues, because of that foundations that have been started in the early times of psychology, we get to address much faster these issues that has been going on in order for us to create solutions that would lead out to a greater turnout para hindi maging worse yung situation that we have in this world. So this brain rot kids, we can really encourage parents now to say na it is not the fault of technology why they are acting like this. It is just how we are going to manage it. How are you managing it as parents into giving access to your kids in this technology? After all, it is the families in this most basic institution that should encourage children that growth. So that is where psychology comes in, to encourage growth in every individuals because of that fast-track understanding of different issues that we get to have now a faster establishment of certain theories, and that theories will become the groundwork for interventions to solve these problems.
I believe personally that psychology has become faster, more exponentially than ever. And this is because of, I think, one reason mainly, and that's mental health has become way more relevant than ever before. And I believe that's because of what a lot of us call globalization, right? In the sense that technology and the fact that we are more interconnected than ever, and through communication, through the ability to talk to one another, to experience the culture of one another, to experience the emotions and feelings, maybe not face to face, but through text or through call, or through seeing so many things happening around the world, I think that psychology has become way more important than ever before. In the past, I believe that people had a lot of bigger problems to deal with, in the sense that poverty was more prevalent, right? A lot of political distress still exists today, but back then politics was a lot more, a lot more severe in terms of their effect on the people, in terms of poverty in politics, as well as their household, right? Maybe their food, maybe there were more malnutrition back then. And so a lot of problems were present back then that have now been fixed now. And as such, I think the shift is, while physical health is still important, the shift of priorities have become more aligned with mental health, in the sense that, obviously, again, through what Aki said earlier, through brain rot kids and through the concept of brain rot, the overconsumption of a lot of information nowadays have, I think, led a lot more people to become more aware of their mental health, right? Through the overconsumption and through the content that all of us are being injected with through social media, through like TikTok and YouTube and whatnot, I think that our brains are becoming a lot more overloaded with a lot of concepts that maybe weren't possible before due to us not being as globalized, right? And so I think psychology right now is so important because technology has become so fast, and the way we produce content has become so fast that I think our brains are not able to catch up. We are being overloaded again. So I think psychology is important because it helps point out a lot of or it helps underpin a lot of underlying like reasons as to why we consume the content, as to why we behave towards that sort of content, as to why these kids and why do they consume these types of brain rot content, right? And why do they become brain rot themselves? And so I think psychology is become faster and has become more important because of the fact that the world is so much more connected. And since we're so much more connected, we experience a lot more stuff. We feel a lot more stuff. And we think a lot more stuff, fundamentally, right? And so I believe that psychology needs to be present. I think mental health awareness needs to be a lot more advocated for, even though it's already been much more advocated for compared to other years. I think it needs to be advocated more, and I think it needs to be understood more. And I also think that psychology in its pace needs to overtake a lot of even the sciences of today, because I think as technology progresses, as astronauts fly out and send out rockets, and as biology and like plants become a lot more developed and evolved, right? And I think as health sciences and recoding like DNA and stuff, I think while a lot of that is important, I think that a lot of that is still grounded in psychology. A lot of that still needs to be managed by obviously the human mind. And so I think that psychology, while it is fast, I think it needs to become even faster to catch up with all of the events, all of the advancements, all of the innovations that are happening throughout the world, right? So that's what I think.
And of course, the biggest question is, what would we say to those aspiring psych majors? And would we recommend this path? Why and why not? So I'd like to go first with this one. Yes, it's important to be hopeful most of the time, if not every time, but I'd like to lay out a pragmatic view. This path is dark in the sense that we are the frontliners of a war that's yet to happen. Because as John has said, mental health has become more relevant, and with globalization, we are more connected than ever. So the issues, for example, diba, yung atin lang, but because of globalization, pati yung issues ng ibang countries, dinadamdam na din natin eh. So imagine the added burden, the added mental exhaustion for that. So parang if you are an aspiring psych major, you should ask yourself if you are ready to bear the cross. Because it's not easy. It will not be easy. There are a lot of issues arising. There's like this doomsday air that's parang everyone can feel because, the climate, politics, and just people from the pandemic. Kasi I believe there's still spillover effect eh. The isolation has parang nabali, especially yung mga developing ages. You need social interaction, and na-deprive yun ng 2 years. So we will see that effect years from now. And parang we need to be prepared for that. There are a lot that has to be dealt with in the future. And unfortunately, we are the frontliners for that. So if you're willing to go down that path, then okay, welcome to hell.
So for me naman, I agree with Ate Aki. It is a dark path. It is a path that is full of uncertainty. And as someone, and the three of us here as persons who is already in this path and have decided to take this path, even for me, I am still unsure on what is to come. And for those students out there aspiring to take psychology, I would say that it is okay to be uncertain. The mystery, if you know what the path that is already laid out, then there's no fun in that path. If you already know your destination, and then what's the fun in it? So this is the beauty of psychology. There is so many uncertainties, and there is so many mysteries. There's so many things that needs to be done and that needs to be discovered. And that is something that would be fulfilling in the long run. So when the doomsday may come, when we are the soldiers, we are the frontliners into combating those issues, let us not be afraid to lend off our voices. Let us not be afraid to lend off what we can. We learn for a reason, because we learn to give. We acquire to give towards people. So that is one thing, or the very thing that we should be encouraging you to take this course. You're not learning here for your own sake. You're learning here so that you will have the bullets to fight the battle that is to come.
One thing that I really recommend for any aspiring young high school psychologists right now is to really get rid of all of your conservative beliefs, to really get rid of all of the preconceptions that you have of the world right now, and to go into psychology with what I believe to be a clean slate of mind, in the sense that you're able to take information without bias, without prejudice, that you're able to meet like different colors of people, because here at MMSU I've met so many different colors and hues of people, especially within our classroom and especially within psychology and even within CAS. People are so different and unique, and so I think that any young psychologist trying to go into college right now or here in MMSU really needs to open their eyes and open their heart and become, how do I say this, more aware of everything that's going on around them, because psychology at the end of the day is, again, the behaviors and the mentality that leads to certain behaviors, right? And so if you're not able to accept the certain mentalities, if you're not able to coincide and to live or to study with people of different hues and colors with different mentalities and behaviors and actions, then I don't think you'll have a very healthy life here in psychology. So far, even as a first year, I believe that if I held on to a lot of my preconceptions back then, to a lot of my struggles in opening up, or to a lot of my struggles in staying within my shell, I don't think I would be able to thrive as much as I am right now in psychology or in this psychological course, right? And so I believe that if you're considering to go into psychology, be prepared to open your mind, be prepared to meet people of different backgrounds, of different histories, of different mentalities and different political beliefs even, and try your best to live with them, to study with them, and to understand the human behavior, because that's what psychologists are all about at the end of the day. Thank you for tuning in, listeners. In this episode of PsychLyne, we explored our journeys through the psychology course here at MMSU, from early surprises to personal growth, challenges, and even our future plans. Our stories showed how deeply this course can shape not just careers, but who we are as people. And if you're thinking about studying psychology, listen to the advice, stay curious, and get ready to step into the world of the human mind.
To those listeners who connected with us by listening to us in this podcast, we thank you very much for taking the time to hear out our stories that we have from first year, second year, into third year in our experiences as psych students. So before we part our ways, I hope we have learned so many things when it comes to psychology, and especially in our theme for this Psych Week about delving into and unveiling the psychology of change and influence. So always remember that when in psych, prepare to be influenced and be changed along the way.
This has been Akci.
This has been Sam.
This has been John.
And you're on the line with PsychLyne.